Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today I am excited to have my friend Joseph Young back, who just came out with a brand new album. So, of course, we got to talk about that. And of course, since you listened to the last episode, you know we're probably going to geek out about music and talk a little bit too about because the creative process always fascinates me. And so we might even get in and talk about a few stories and how some of these songs actually came about, which again, you know, if you're not a musician, that's fine. It's always interesting to listen and hear how the creative process works, because it's the same creative process that musicians use for you to create anything in your life that you want as well. So with that, let's roll that episode. You are jamming with Jason Mefford, where you hear inspiring interviews with some amazing people. Some are famous, some may seem ordinary, and they are all doing extraordinary things to positively change the world. Sometimes it's just you and me having an intimate and authentic conversation about how you can change the world around you and rewrite the story of your life by being more authentic, accepting and loving yourself more, and spreading love to others. Since really, all you need is love. And what the world needs now is love, sweet love. We discuss all aspects of self-improvement, growth, and so much more. Great content, insightful advice that's practical and helpful to anyone that listens. You're always eager to come back for more and share with your friends and family, since you learn something in every episode. So sit back and enjoy the easy listening while you feel seen and heard in this informative, authentic, and entertaining podcast. Now, let's roll that beautiful podcast footage. All right, Joe, I am excited to have you back.
Well, it's wonderful to be back, Jason.
We gotta show everybody, you know, some people will be listening to audio, some people will be watching on video, but your latest album, Into the Unknown, I don't know, we've got it like in stereo here.
There we go.
Both got the copies.
Ooh.
Has come out, which I was waiting with bated breath for.
You and me both.
Well, because that's the thing, and I got to ask you some questions. We'll get into some of that too, because it's interesting. I know you'd made some. It's been about 4 years for this album to come out, so I do want to jump in and talk a little bit about some of that too. But I'm excited for it. You know, I know last time we talked, you were working on it. You were kind of showing me some of the album cover too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which I think is great. But you know, just really wanted to kind of jump in, talk about music in general, and about what you're doing. I know one of the questions that people have asked me, because I've posted a lot, and it's like, well, what kind of music does he do? So I figured, well, let me let you kind of take a stab at that, and then I'll kind of try to take a stab at it too, and help people kind of see why I love your stuff so much.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that we're both taking a stab at that, because it's
hard to describe, right?
Yeah, it seems like it should be a simple question. I guess I'll start with, you know, just the general umbrella of New Age. Mm-hmm. And where that comes from is like in the New Age kind of started before the early 80s, but when the genre started getting popular, especially in the early 80s, there's all this music that incorporated stuff from all over the world. World music sometimes is under the new umbrella, sometimes not, but incorporated, like, some of it was like mellow synthesizer tones, some of it was just like piano stuff, but it also incorporated, you know, just different instruments from all over the world that you might not necessarily hear. I don't know. It was a large conglomeration of stuff that was put together that wasn't rock and roll, that wasn't country, that wasn't rap, and is generally more mellow, often electronic based. And for me, like my influences that got me started on my journey were Mannheim Steamroller with Chip Davis, Vangelis, the Chariots of Fire soundtrack, Kataro. That's kind of those are, if I could compare myself to anything, it would be somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean that's the hard part, when you look it up. I mean, everybody in the industry just drops everything that they don't know where else it belongs in New Age.
Yeah.
So, but it's the way you kind of described it is one of the things that I love about how you bring in so many different instruments, so many different sounds and feel with it as well, and that it is something that's mellow, right? Because I use it. I listen to. I've got all your different albums, but this one I've been listening to about 3 to 5 times a week because it helps me in the morning as I'm trying to get ready, get centered for the day, right? Because a lot of times we can be like, kind of crazy, right? So I put it on and I feel centered. I feel like I have more of the energy, and it's nice for me to just kind of start the day that way as well. But yeah, I love how it's a lot of different stuff, right? And so we can go through and we can talk about some of the stuff on the new album as well, and maybe even some of the older stuff too. But to me, it's not even, there's a smooth jazz aspect to it, right? Because of a lot of the saxophone and stuff that you play. There's a lot of a Native American feel to it, even sometimes with the flutes that you've got going on in a lot of the stuff. Sometimes I hear like a Middle Eastern kind of an influence to it as well. Some of the instruments, I have no idea what it is that you're playing, right? And there's some other sounds, even to where on this one, there's it's world music, but sometimes it's a little out of this world music as well. So it's almost like it's almost like a sci-fi soundtrack too on some of the stuff almost, which again I think was kind of the feel that you were going for on some of the songs, just based on some of the sounds and other stuff that you
absolutely.
But yeah, like I said, I think it's great. Maybe we for everybody who hasn't gotten it, we'll make sure and put in the show notes too, but you can get it on Bandcamp is probably the best place to go, or on any of the streaming things. You can put in Joseph Young and be able to
Joseph L. Young, put the initial
Joseph
in there.
L.
That helps. The L helps. Differentiate me from all the other millions of Joe Youngs out there
that are out there. Well, so let's talk about some of the tracks maybe that are on here, because I know, like you said, there's certain there's some stories even that kind of go behind some of this stuff as well, right? So I know, was it Beyond the Horizon? I love that song.
Cool.
That is one of those where it really kind of starts off very sci-fi-ish, right? Because it's almost like you're listening in a movie, and it's I think that's like, go to Bay, whatever, something like that at the beginning, right? But and so it kind of maybe explain a little bit behind that song, if you would, because to me too, that's one of the songs where I feel hope when I listen to that song.
Awesome.
Right? So it's like, that's just kind of the emotion that I feel every time I listen to that song. Is it the way you did it? I just feel hopeful listening to it. So
very cool. Very cool. All right. So there's a lot to unpack on this song for me. So I have to start out by saying too that instrumental music is interesting to me, especially as a composer, because unless you see an interview like this, or you have liner notes or something, people hear the music and quite often don't have any idea of what the composer was thinking when they wrote it. If you have lyrics, the lyrics tell you what the song is about, but instrumental music doesn't have that. So then we rely on a myriad of other things sometimes if we want to make you experience something, or if we want to like set a mood and make it sound like it's in outer space, which the beginning of this, very much the intention was that this was an off-world kind of journey type of thing. I'm a huge science fiction fan. Have been since I'll go ahead and date both of us since I saw
No, we
Star
grew up
Wars.
together.
And
Star Wars,
yeah, Star Wars in theaters in
the
1977.
original,
Yep, when it came out. So when I wrote Beyond the Horizon, one of the first really big inspirations for me was I was right in the middle of reading the series and watching the series The Expanse. I'm a rabid Expanse fan. I think it's one of the best sci-fi space series ever, for me. And I love the music in the beginning of that, and that was kind of like, it made me want to write a space song. So that was kind of the initial inspiration. There's some Star Trek. There's a little bit of Star Trek feeling to it. I kind of felt that I was, playing with there. Also in the beginning, you kind of mentioned it. I don't want to give it away, but there is a total sci-fi reference in the beginning of the song, and I don't want to say what it is.
They got to listen to find out.
Yeah, you have to listen to find. Nobody's got it yet, and people have come kind of close, but I'm like, you just need to listen carefully. It's very, very, I don't know. I think it's clear, but maybe not. I don't know. So Beyond the Horizon is total love of sci-fi for me, and some of the voices I used in it were kind of like the main sound that comes in during the chorus is a very much kind of an 80s esque, Kataro-ish sort of sound. So I was purposely, relying on, certain tones and things to kind of convey what I wanted. And I also have like an entire video planned for this that I don't know if I'll ever get to do, because it quickly became, I dabble in animation. So like all my album covers, or almost all of them, are animated 3D animations. And I have a whole thing with this that's all planned out. I even wrote a script, but it became too big. And it's like, I don't even know how I'm would do this. So I might do like an abbreviated version that just got like still images or something. I don't know, but.
Well, no, that would be good. Because, and it's, I guess, for part of it, because there's a lot that goes into when you're composing and coming up with these things, right? Again, it's like, I mean, it took you 4 years to put this thing together. There was thousands and thousands of hours that went into this, and in the way that you're trying to get those specific feelings or emotions or other stuff to kind of come across as well. So, but yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that again. Well, I'm gonna listen to it a lot, but I got to figure out that reference that you're referring to.
It's in the beginning. It's in the first 30 seconds, and it tells you what it is.
Okay.
It doesn't say it in the way you normally hear it, but it tells you what it is.
Okay. Challenge accepted, my friend. Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Well, I know too, it's always to me, so maybe we can go through, and just kind of let you talk a little bit about some of the songs, what they mean to you, what was kind of behind it, some of the stories behind it. Because to me, again, it's always fascinating. It's like when Bowie had there was a Bowie exhibit in New York a few years ago that I went to.
I'm jealous. Nice.
I know it was fabulous, man. I mean, it was just amazing. But Space Oddity, I mean, one of the classic Bowie songs, right? But to sit there, I'd never thought about it that way until I was sitting there looking at his handwritten lyrics.
Oh, right? Wow.
And looking at the picture that inspired that song, which was the one, it was the blue dot kind of one. It was one of the first pictures taken from outer space of the Earth.
That was one of the Voyager pictures, I believe.
Yeah, and so it was just blackness except for really the Earth. And he wrote that song, and now when I listen to that, it's like, man, that song has a lot more meaning to me. So I always love to hear some of the stuff that's behind it and what the impetus was behind it. So Take it away. What one do you want to talk about, or how do you want to? What stories do you want to kind of impart here on kind of this process that you went through?
All right, I made notes for myself. I guess to start out, I just would say that the entire album, the last three albums especially, I've had kind of themes in mind that I was working off of.
Mm-hmm.
And this album had a couple of different themes that blend together in interesting ways, at least in my research in my brain. Part of it's definitely sci-fi fantasy based, and part of it is science and history based. So there was a big space influence. There's one of the things I did during the first year of COVID was I did a lot of research, and I've always been interested in history, and so I really took a deep dive into ancient history, and megalithic sites in particular all of them are just completely, totally fascinating to me. And there's way more that we don't know about them than what we know about them. And it's like one of those things that I mean, there's even information out there that they have decided, the academic community is like, okay, this is what this was, and we've written it down and we've based all our careers off of it, so we don't want to change it. And there's all this new evidence coming up that was like, that is challenging all of that. And to me, it's just fascinating. Göbekli Tepe is a site that they found in Turkey in around 2009, I think. And the site's supposed to be around 12,000 years old. And before they found Göbekli Tepe, it was like they were saying, oh, nothing, there weren't anything sites that old. There wasn't. And if there was, because it was farmers or something, and it was all very watered down. So like Göbekli Tepe is one of the sites that I've looked at that's like is changing the way we're looking at history.
Well, and it's funny because on the album cover too, right? I mean, you've got a gate, yep. A portal. Other people would call portals as well.
I have a thing for portals.
I know you do. You had it on a couple of album covers, right? Because we look at this stone structure and we just think it's something 3D as well. That there are, I mean, the title Into the Unknown, right, is that a lot of times, again, there's been much higher technology on this planet than we give people credit for. We think all the old people were just farmers, but it was much more than that. And that's why too, they the last track, Ancestral Crossings, when I listen to that, I can imagine our ancestor humans in a line making crossings and moving to different places in this world as well, right? Because again, everything has been kind of populated at different times in different ways, but there's been migrations of people throughout this planet for millions of years. So anyway, that was
so ancient history, space, those are the big things. And I might, because nobody has asked me about this, and I've been waiting for them, so I'm kind of like, I want to talk about it a little bit. The album cover is from bottom to top, kind of represents all the stuff that I, or not all the stuff, but a lot of the stuff that I researched. There's a lot of history, and all of those symbols, well, not all of them, but many of them are very specific, and it's supposed to be a little bit mysterious. But if you actually were to start researching many of the symbols on this album cover, it would be a giant history lesson for anybody that's interested.
Well, yeah. Well, and because I was going to ask you before when we had talked before, because I remember on the right hand side you've got the 3 dots, the 1 and the 4, right? So again, is that a representation of the symbol that we have down at the bottom, which is pi of 314?
So the top is actually a little different. I'll go ahead and the dots are Olmec.
Okay.
and then on this side it's Sumerian, it's cuneiform.
Okay.
And
yeah, so for those of you that are listening audio, you might want to go see the video on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the difference up on top.
Yeah. So on top there is my shout out to Nikola Tesla. Yep. He was fascinated with the numbers 3, 6, and 9. Mm-hmm. And so I have 3, 6, and 9 written in cuneiform, and I have 3, 6, and 9 repeated in Olmec.
Oh, I didn't realize that the one with the line was a 6.
Yes.
In Olmec.
Yep. If I did my research correctly, it's a 6. If I didn't, then it's an artistic interpretation.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. Now,
hopefully the Olmec
I'm going to geek out afterwards too and do more. Well, and because again, up at the top, right, you've got the circle and the triangle as well, which again, the triangle represents 3, 6, and 9 as well. Which
is one thing that it represents. Yes.
One of the many things that it represents, but that ends up being kind of the 3 points of that as well, and the importance of the number 9, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, I think, right? Number 9.
Number 9.
You know, they were given the shout out to it too, because again, I think you probably know the quote better than I do from Tesla, but once you understand the number 9, you understand the secrets of the universe, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
All right. Jason's got more research. Well, did you want to talk any more about this as well, since I'm the first person to ask you the questions?
So again, apologies to the audio only people. This bottom thing here, which isn't quite as highlighted, if you look, there's a lot of Egyptian hieroglyphs, and this appears to be like a bag that is quite often held in their hand, and nobody has ever really, they don't know what it is for sure. Nobody's ever figured it out. I think some of the best guesses I've seen is that it represents some sort of knowledge. So in my case, one of the reasons why I put it at the bottom is that this is like the knowledge that all of this other stuff is built upon. But nobody really knows for sure. But the interesting thing is, when I first started seeing this symbol and researching it, it was only found in Egypt. Well, then as I started doing more research on all these other sites around the world, this same little lock or bag or whatever it is, it was found carved into the stone reliefs in Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. And I believe there was another one found in South America somewhere. And so there's like this one thing that was supposed to have been localized now has popped up in different areas of the world that's like, okay, this is suggesting that there was a lot more communication going on way back when than many of us probably thought there was. And nobody knows the answer, but it's really intriguing to think about.
Well, and the whole idea of ancient history, or another term that a lot of people use too, is ancient wisdom, right? As well, that the more that I've thought about it and have learned more about ancient wisdom as well, it always, in the West especially, we always try to pride ourselves on the savages and the civilized. The more that I research, the more that I know, I'm thinking, who are the savages and who are the civilized ones? That a lot of things that had been going on for millions of years that were destroyed, now we're seeing actually coming back again, right? So through your music, through your research, through the album cover as well, that we're moving back to more of some of those ancient ways, because that's how you have a better balance with the earth, with ourselves, with everything else as well, which is interesting.
It's fun stuff and very inspiring for me as an artist and a musician.
Well, I guess, is that one of the reasons too why you bring a lot of those sounds and those oftentimes ancient instruments that most people aren't using anymore into your music as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, do I have it back here? I'm trying to see if I have it. Let me grab something off my shelf real quick.
Yeah.
Speaking of ancient instruments, this is an Armenian duduk. And this is the instrument that is featured on the title track, Into the Unknown. And I think I first heard it, I'm trying to remember the artist's name. So there's a Peter Gabriel concert. He's one of my musical heroes as well. One of the best concerts I've ever been to was Peter Gabriel Sting together. Anyways, watching, what is it? Shaking Secret Life tour, and they started the concert with an artist playing the duduk, and I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, even though he's very famous. And I fell in love with the duduk, and I had also heard the duduk on many soundtracks. This has been used in all sorts of soundtracks, like Gladiator, Passion of the Christ, to just mention a few. It's very super haunting, just an amazing instrument. And so I bought one several years ago, and I'm like, I have to use this in a recording at some point. And I finally did. It's ridiculously hard to play, but
because looking at it, I mean, it's long, so it looks like a kind of a Native American flute. It's just a straight down with the holes, right? Just like a regular flute, wooden flute. But the top, it looks like, it's a double reed?
It's a double reed.
So it ends up kind of like an oboe sort of a feel to try to play it.
It is, but there's a tremendous amount of back pressure, more than any other instrument I've ever played. And this, they call it the Ramesh. You have to get it wet for it, kind of like a regular reed. You have to get it wet before it will start speaking properly. But then you end up adjusting it like every minute, or like the longer you play it, the more you have to adjust it. And so you're constantly adjusting this to maintain the sound throughout your playing. And then on top of that, most like flutes, as you bring your fingers up, you just kind of leave them up. Because this is such an old instrument and it hasn't really been updated, as you get to the top, you put these fingers back down to keep it in tune.
Oh, interesting.
Which is very, like, if you're used to just playing like a penny whistle or a Native American style flute, is very counterintuitive to your playing style. So
but it gives you said more of kind of a haunting feel to it as well. It gives a different sound and frequency than any other instrument.
Yeah, totally different sound. And that was for Into the Unknown. It's kind of goes two ways. One, Into the Unknown is, like, I've always been fascinated with space, so there's that exploration of the universe type of thing. But then it also goes to exploring our past and all of these ancient relics and things that are scattered around our Earth that we don't know anything about. And so for that piece, I was really trying to kind of marry the ancient past with outer space, which has been done quite often in sci-fi worlds and fantasy.
They actually marry up much better than people realize.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because that was always the funny thing. I mean, you made reference to Star Wars before, right? But it was always funny to me that Lucas, at the beginning of it, right, as the credits are rolling, a long time ago in a galaxy far away. It's like, again, from a time perspective, right, in the time that we're living in here, and especially, well, if you take Star Wars, right, because again, we always think of sci-fi as being in the future, but in certain places, sci-fi has been in the past as well. And two, of how Lucas chose to use such crude looking technology for sci-fi as well. I mean, it's like, you don't see that crudeness of technology now, with the big buttons and everything. I mean, you saw it back in the 50s and 60s in the industrial things here, but not now, as well. And so I always kind of saw that as an irony of how he chose to do that too.
Yeah. And I think that was something The Expanse used as well. As The Expanse is like 500 years in our future, but there's much technology in the expanse that is from someone else's past.
Yes.
That is way more advanced than, you know, anything that we have now or at the time, you know, in the time that the books and the TV show take place.
Well, and now that the Defense Department is finally releasing some of the stuff about UFOs, we're going to find out that science fiction is not science fiction, it's science faction.
There we go.
But anyway. All right. Well, duduk, I did not know that. And actually, one of our sons, his girlfriend, has Armenian heritage.
Oh, cool.
And so I've got to go back and ask her about that now, too, see if she even knows about it. Yeah. I mean, to the point that she actually imported a dog. Is that the right way of saying it? But an actual dog from Armenia.
Oh, wow.
That she brought over to the US.
Okay.
As part of that. So anyway, interesting.
Yeah. So that was kind of, it ended up being kind of like a bridge for me to connect different things together. And I wanted that piece to sound like you were saying, kind of futuristic, but archaic or old at the same time. Archaic might not be the right term, but
ancient.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's really not. Yeah. Ancient is not archaic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What you said.
Well, so what else? I mean, what are some of the other stories kind of that you have behind behind creating this as well?
Let's see. I'll go over just a couple short ones real quick. One, I just want to give the second piece, Remembrance of Time, just because it turned out so beautiful, I think. I wrote that with my very good friend, Lynn Trudeau. And we had done some jams together, and then we kind of hadn't talked about it for a while. And then one day, like 3 or 4 months later, she sends me this piano piece. And just beautiful, beautiful piano. And so then I added flute, Chinese xiao flute to it, and some other things. And so it was just like, anytime I get to collaborate with somebody and it turns out, thank you, Lynn, for collaborating with me on this. And I hope that this piece, gets out there, because I think it turned out beautifully.
Yeah, I was wondering if she was the piano on that. So
yep.
Well, and maybe let's talk, because again, it's like with any of my episodes and what I talk about, we're talking about what we're talking about, but we're talking about what we're not talking about as well, right? So,
yes.
So how about that with collaboration? Because I think sometimes people want to just go it themselves, which is fine, in a lot of times, but especially artistically, musically, even in business life, in your personal life, a lot of times when we have collaborators, different magic happens. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's you can look at any of the bands, if you will, and there were certain ones. The Beatles wouldn't have been the Beatles if all 4 of them hadn't been there.
Yep.
Right. Because they each added something different.
Yeah.
You look even like, newer Van Halen, right? Van Halen with David Lee Roth versus Van Halen with Sammy Hagar.
Yep.
3 of the 4 people are the same, but they're completely different sounds when you add a different collaborator to it. So maybe talk a little bit about, because I know this wasn't the first time, I don't think, that you've collaborated with people on stuff as well, is it?
No, I've done a lot of collaborations, some on my own albums, some with other people's projects. One that comes to mind we talked about earlier was one I did with Rana Yellow Robe, from Every Moment, and I just forgot the name of the piece.
It was the
Letting Go. Yeah. Collaboration to me is, I don't know, it's almost, doing your own stuff is rewarding. Collaborations are, I think, even more rewarding, and the way I view them is, you just always, they always surprise me, because you never know what the other person is going to come up with, or where they're going to come from. You might throw out an idea, and maybe you threw out this idea first, and in your brain you have it in this little box, because it was your idea. But then where people take that, once you kind of let it go, you let this out into the universe a little bit, is always surprising and always enjoyable. And so the act of creating something like Letting Go. I had no idea what Rana was going to do with the lyrics. I sent her a kind of stripped down track, and I didn't know. In fact, I didn't even hear it until the day we recorded it. She lives in Tacoma, and so I knew she had completed. She said, "Hey, I'm ready." So I packed up the recording gear, drove to Tacoma, and my first time hearing it was that day that we recorded her vocals. With Lynn's piano, I had a little bit of an idea because that one was a little bit more. We kind of created a little bit together, and then we kind of we parted, and then we came back together. So it was just, I guess, collaboration is an adventure. Is, I guess, the biggest thing. It's an adventure. And if you can kind of get yourself out of the way and let the other people do what they're good at, that's when it becomes really fun and exciting. You say, here's my little thing. Now you take it and do your thing, whatever that is, and have really no expectations or no, like, it has to be this way. I think you have to let go of any ego or any idea of what you think it might be, because it's going to go a different direction. And that's why it's fun.
Well, and it's interesting because as you bring that up, because we just watched the Beatles, Let It Be. No.
Oh yeah.
Get Back documentary. And it was interesting because, again, I mean, that was literally right before they broke up pretty much. I mean, it was the last time that they publicly played together on the rooftop. And then I think they still, did a couple of mixes and had a couple of albums, but never performed publicly again. But it was interesting to see on that too, that the collaboration that they had from earlier on had kind of gone away. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were certain times, I mean, I love all the Beatles, but there were a few times when Paul was just being a dick to everybody else, and it's like the other three of them are kind of looking at each other like, come on, dude, let the ego go. Let's just have some fun, yep. Let's just kind of play. But he was trying to control it so much. And that what ended up happening is as they evolved as a group, it became more John songs, Paul's songs, George's songs, Ringo's songs, right?
Yep.
Instead of that true collaboration that they used to have, that's where the real magic comes.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Huh. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I look forward to more collaborations in the future from maybe people I know or I don't know. It's just always, and it's the unknown.
You're going into the unknown.
Yes.
And we're letting go, right?
Yep.
It's kind of funny how we could almost use a lot of your titles to just, anyway, say what we're trying to say.
Yes.
Anyway.
Stories. So I think the best story, because you asked me about stories for stuff, the best story of any song on this album is Secrets of Stone.
Okay.
And that is one that's doing better. Let's see, it has been quite a month. So the album, this is end of July. So it hasn't been out quite a month yet. And it's whenever an artist releases multiple songs in whatever form, you want to call that, I still call them albums. You never know what people are going to like and grab onto. And you have your favorites as, the artist. And you have stuff that sometimes you go, well, I really like this one, but I don't know how other people are going to like it because I personally think it's strange. Anyway, this one I thought was a little strange, and there's a couple of very good reasons for that. Probably this is one of the older ones. Secrets of Stone and Between Worlds were both released as singles a couple of years ago, and then made it onto this album. So Secrets of Stone, probably 3 years ago, I was going to do a concert in a class on Native American style flute playing in Denver. So from Boise to Denver is like a 14-hour drive or something like that. It's a long drive. So I had that to do. About 5 days before I was to leave on this trip, I was playing a concert with my blues band in Eagle, Idaho for Eagle Fun Days. And we were out on this trailer in the hot weather, kind of like today. And we got done with the gig. I was running sound, and so it was all my gear, and I was pulling a speaker back to the car, and I was going in between the tractor, the trailer we were on, and then the truck that hauled it in. It was still attached, and there's like a little path you could go in between it. And so I'd been using that path all night because it was like the easiest way to get from behind stage to up front of the stage. So I'm pulling a speaker, it's on wheels, it's getting dark, through this thing, and I hit my head right here on this spike that was sticking down. It was about this long, that I hadn't seen the entire evening. About knocked myself out. Head injuries are weird. When I finally got done screaming my head off and probably sobbing, I got up, and it looked like a crime scene. It looked like somebody had been stabbed.
Because any head wound just like bleeds like crazy too.
So I kind of sat there. My bandmates, under my direction, loaded the rest of my car back up, and somehow I talked them into letting me drive home. Okay. Public service announcement: if you get hit in the head, don't drive yourself home. Especially if it's bleeding. Just let them take you to the hospital. That's what you should do. So I got home, and I had to wake my wife up. It's like 1 a.m, and she's like, I think we should take you to the ER. So we go to the ER. They stitch me up. I answer the questions well enough that the doctor, I guess, didn't feel the need, because they ask you all these questions to see if you have a concussion. Mm-hmm. And I guess I answered their questions well enough that even though I had been bleeding and they figured it was just cut, maybe they didn't know what happened other than me telling them, that they didn't feel the need to talk to me about concussion protocol, which in retrospect was I think pretty bad on their part. So flash forward 5 days, I have this trip to go on, and I hop in my car and I drive to Vernal, Utah. That's my stopping point. I stay overnight there. And I always, when I travel, if I can find someplace to stop, if I have even a little bit of time, like I'm a waterfall junkie, no waterfalls in Vernal, Utah.
But there are dinosaurs.
There are dinosaurs. Yep. Dinosaur Monument, which I'd been to before. So I was looking for something new. Yeah. And I found this area like 30 miles out of Vernal, Utah, that had just the strangest rocks you've ever seen. If you watch original Star Trek, they look like rocks, like foam rocks from an original Star Trek set is what these rocks look like. Huh. And I ended up spending about 2 hours in 100+ degree weather with, I just gotten a new little robotic camera. It was like this big, but it was on a gimbal and it shot 4K, and I could program it to run down a track. And so I spent a lot of time out in the desert filming these rocks. So I did that. I go to my, finish going to Denver. I do the class, I do the concert, I drive home, and then I was inspired by these really weird rocks that I'd seen and got all this video of. So after getting home, I should have probably been resting, because I just done, driven, worked, driven back, should have been tired. But when the muse speaks, you should listen. And I started writing the song. I wrote the song in about a day, and I spent the next 2 days editing the video. And on the third day, I woke up at about 2 a.m. in the morning with the most splitting headache I had ever experienced in my life. Something was wrong. My wife has a friend that's a nurse. She talked to her, and she's like, yeah, you have a concussion. I'm like, well, they didn't tell me that at the hospital, and I didn't even have the stitches out yet. And it's like, what I didn't know was that concussions sometimes will take a week or even 2. They can appear like after you can be fine, you hit your head, and you can be fine for up to maybe a week or 2, and then have this thing, happen. And the absolute worst, one of the worst things you can do if you have a concussion is lots of screen time.
Which you've been editing on the video for.
I just spent like 72 hours of screen time recording and editing this video for this song. So Yeah, it was the silver lining is I got a great tune out of it and it's doing well, but it was born out of, probably a little bit of concussion, a little bit of weird rocks. I have the video on YouTube if you want to know what these rocks look like. Check out Secrets of Stone. Yeah, that was an adventure.
Well, and it's interesting too, like you brought that up because, okay, you had a concussion when you did it. It probably wasn't the song that you were most proud of, let's say, or that you spent the most time on, but it's got to be especially fascinating as an artist for what things you like, right, versus what the public likes as well, right? I mean, I remember being in, I can't even remember which art museum I was in. It was one of the famous ones, and there was I want to say it was a Rodin, and it was like people were just lining up just to look at this little Rodin statue. They weren't looking at anything else in the whole museum. They were just coming in to look at that and leave. And I remember standing there going, I can't believe, everybody, you're sitting here, you're missing all of this other stuff here. Right. But are looking at this particular thing. So it must be that way too, as an artist like that, where sometimes you're surprised at how well certain things do versus other stuff that you're like, man, that was just like, the bomb, but nobody really appreciates it.
Yep. And it was funny too, because it is kind of a very different sounding piece. It's very moody. It spends about half its time being slow and moody, and then it picks up about halfway through. And when I first played it for my wife, I didn't show her the video. I played her the song first, and her first reaction was, I like it, but it's kind of strange. And then I showed her the video, and she's like, oh, it makes total sense now. Weird rocks, I get it.
Interesting. Well, and that's one where like you said, it was more the visual and creating the video from it almost before the music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times it's the other way. The music is created and then you kind of create the video to go along with it.
Yeah.
So that was even kind of backwards in your creative process as well.
Yep. And it also just fit in totally really well with my kind of ancient history thing, because this was not a megalithic site, but the rocks were so strange, and it was obviously they had been formed who knows how many thousands of years ago. And I'm walking around this rock wonderland, and it's just like, what have these rocks witnessed? Certainly way more than I can maybe even imagine. And normally when you look at rock formations, I'm no geologist, but they kind of like, there was they were not uniform in the way they were made. They were jumbled, and different things right next, two rock formations right next to each other would be so different that it's like, how did this happen? Because it's like, I don't see any uniformity here, that whatever created this was not a normal geologic event, if there is such a thing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I totally understand. Yeah, and I think sometimes too, we get so busy with life in general, that how much of the time when we stop and kind of contemplate some of that stuff too, right? Like, yeah, like I remember being in Germany one time, when I was younger, and walking into this door, and above the door it said 1099, and it's like, that's the year this place was built. Right. And it's like, it wasn't a street address. It was the year that building was made. And, same thing, walking inside that building and going, for the last 900 and some years, right, what's this building seen?
Yeah.
What's this building actually experienced? And interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, no, I wanted to talk a little bit too, kind of about the time frame too, right? Because like you said, I mean, it took you 4 years to do this, and want to kind of just ask some questions about that. And again, answer what you want to, what you don't want to. Tell me to fuck off. It's okay, right? but why did you wait the 4 years? to do it?
So I had about 70% of this done before COVID happened. I had a lot of it done before COVID happened, and my plan was to release it in like 2020, probably 2020 was the original plan. You know, and that had been, so that was like a couple years after, you know, every moment. And so a year to two in that area is like, you know, is a good amount of time. You don't want to generally, you don't want to go beyond that, you know, to stay relevant and your fans' minds. You need to be releasing stuff. And I had been doing some collaborations and had released some singles in the meantime. And then the whole COVID thing happened, and a couple different things. One is with the way the market started going. So it's like I looked at releasing it during COVID, and half the radio stations were like shut down. There's a lot of stuff in my genre in the New Age world that's like a lot of college radio stations, and they were just shut down. And so it's like, well, you could release something, but the chance of your album showing up and getting lost in a pile of stuff that nobody's looked at in 6 months is great. So on one hand, it didn't really seem like a good business plan to release during COVID for me.
Yeah.
At the same time, I saw other artists that had done COVID releases. One of them that comes to mind because I saw an interview with her, it was Dua Lipa. It released an album, and I think it did very well. Of course, she's a lot, you know, way more people in the world have heard of her. She has more marketing power than I do. So I don't know. For me at the time, it didn't make business sense. So I thought that I would wait. And then as it went on, I got COVID really bad. I had it for 2 months. I had original recipe before vaccines were out, and it kicked my butt. I couldn't get rid of the fever. It was like the longest thing, and they finally treated me for atypical walking pneumonia. Even though my lungs were perfectly clear, that was like the only thing that wasn't, you know, the only thing that I didn't have. And I got very depressed, I think, during that time. And so finishing the writing and doing all the other creative things was very difficult.
I could admit. I mean, because being sick for that long, you know, and I know too. I mean, this is one of those things that happens with everybody, but you especially see it with anybody who's a business owner or an artist or other people like that. Is, you know, when a lot of times we end up going into some of these depression phases, right?
Yep.
And at that point, it's just hard to do anything. I mean, some days you don't even feel like getting out of bed.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of that, like you said, when the muse shows up, right, you go guns, right?
Yep.
Because when she leaves, sometimes it's a while before she comes back. You know?
Yep.
And so that's why a lot of times, you know, like I said, artists, musicians, business owners, they end up being kind of manic in certain times too, right? Because it's like, you know, I mean, this week I'm working 90 hours, right? Because it's like things are going on all cylinders. I got a deadline. I'm feeling good. Boom, 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 right? And next week it might be 10 hours.
Yep.
Which is kind of, I mean, it sounds like it was kind of what you were going through there then as well, right? I mean,
yeah. So it started out as kind of a business decision, and then life and COVID happened, and it ended up going from business to just kind of depression, and like, you know, me and the rest of the world trying to figure out what the heck is going on and how are we going to make it through it. And oh my gosh, I have to go buy toilet paper. Oh, I hope they have some.
If not, we're going back to magazines.
Yep. So it was a weird couple of years. So the original intent was to be like at that 1.5 to 2 year mark, and then all of that happened, and it got pushed out, and it just, you know, life happens sometimes. So that was kind of what happened this time. I did have like Transcendence was a piece that was not originally in the mix at all, and that was written very last minute. That was written like probably February, probably written in March. Everything else was done, and then I added that one in.
Huh.
And took off another one that I just didn't feel like really fit.
Well, because that's the thing too, is we were talking before about, so much of the time now you still make albums where most musicians now are just making songs, right? Because everything is pretty much just download, the one song, so they focus on one song versus an album that actually has some sort of a theme that kind of runs through the whole thing versus just 10 random songs being thrown together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm still, I don't know. I would like to think I have to change with the times, because you can't ignore what is happening in the marketing of, whatever world you're in. So to some extent, yes, I will be doing more single song releases in the future, and I'll be, running with that model because that's what I have to do as an artist to survive. But I would like to think that I'll never stop creating albums, because there's something magical that happens with an album that you don't get from one song. And that's the story. I think one of the original Fresh Air albums, Mannheim Steamroller, the Fresh Air series, was Fresh Air 5. And Fresh Air 5 was Chip Davis based it upon Johannes Kepler, in his writings, had a dream that he sailed to the moon. And so you look at the album cover, on that album cover of Fresh Air 5, and it's a ship, with sails sailing to the moon. And so that whole album was based upon that theme. And I've always loved the idea of storytelling, and it's because, quite honestly, one song is not always enough to tell the story that you want to tell. And so you need many songs to do that. And that's why the album is still good, because that gives you the bandwidth that you can tell more of a full story.
Yeah, which I love. And like I said, it's that's why I listen to it, and I put it on at the beginning and I kind of listen through, right? Because it's to me, I think, like I said at the beginning, it's I know that there's a lot of thought that goes into your work, and hopefully people listening kind of understand now, maybe too, a little bit more of what goes into the creative process. Because I think, sometimes it's like we can listen to a 3 or 4 minute song and not realize that it took you 6 months to put all of that together. Or, you watch a 2-hour film and you don't realize the hundreds of thousands of hours of time that go into making and editing and everything around that. Or you read a book and it takes you 8 hours to read a book, but it took that author maybe a year to write something you could read in 8 hours. Right. And that there is a lot more thought and things that go into it. Because like I said, every one of your songs that I listen to, it brings up certain emotions. Right. And it's like you're taking me on a trip, which I love. And specifically, I use certain songs to help me do certain things, as well. Right. I mean, if I want to feel more hope, I'm going to listen to Beyond the Horizon, right? Because that's one of those songs that makes me feel that way. Letting Go, that we referred to before from the previous album, another one on there, Free. Both of those songs, just when I'm feeling heavy, and I'm feeling kind of down, when I listen to those songs, I feel like I'm becoming more free, or I'm letting go whatever it is that's holding me back as well. Right?
That's wonderful. That's awesome.
Which I don't know if that was your intention or not behind it, but that's how I feel, and that's one of the reasons why I love music so much. So
and actually on those two, and specifically, I would say that was part of the intention on those two. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, because it has brought me actual healing. That's what I try to tell people sometimes, is that music can actually create healing. And I think
Mhm.
your music does that, which is another reason why I want everybody to know about it.
Awesome.
Plus, you're an awesome guy. I like you too. So. Well, we got to wrap up for today because everybody's got to probably get back onto their own stuff. I'm not like Joe Rogan and can do 3-hour, 4-hour podcasts. But any final thoughts that you want to leave with people today?
Oh, well, first I'll just thank you for having me back. It's always an honor and a pleasure to talk with you and kind of, talk more about, the weird things that I do and sometimes how they come about. Check out my website, josephlyoung.com. Having the L in there is important.
Yep.
And 3 of these songs, what do we have? Secrets of Stone, Enchanted, and Eclipsed, and Between Worlds. 4 of them I have videos on YouTube. A couple of them are actually live performances. A couple of them are animated things. And just no matter whether it's me or any other artist, hitting the like button is important. Adding us to your playlist is important. It helps the algorithms and all of that stuff. So for me and every artist out there, if you enjoy their work, like it, subscribe, buy the stuff, it helps immensely.
Yeah, it does, because it's a lot of people think, oh, musicians make tons of money. No, they don't. In the old days when you got a record contract, but even now those record contracts are gone.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, if you like a particular artist, if you appreciate them, tell them, buy their stuff.
Yep.
Go to concerts when they have them.
Yep.
Because that's how people can make money, and they can keep bringing this stuff to you as well. So yeah, I appreciate it. I'm going to keep being a supporter, man.
Well, thank you much. And commenting too. I love to see comments on stuff where people hear an instrumental song. It's like, what did it make them think of? Because it's always surprising where people's minds go, and I can never guess. And so that's kind of fun to hear from people when they say, oh, it took me here. And it's like, wow, I would have never have even thought of that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna be doing more of that too. Let you know too, because I know too, as being a creator myself, it's always nice to hear back from people.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's like, I mean, you do it, you put it out there, but you don't get to see the smiles on their faces because they're watching in their own home or in their car or whatever else, right? And so a lot of times you don't get that feedback, and it's great to get the feedback from people as well. Yeah. So important stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have you back, and we're not going to wait until the next album release either. So
awesome.
We're gonna keep talking, my friend.
And then we have a lot to talk about. So
I know we have a lot more to talk about actually too. Yeah, I've got about 5 different rabbit holes from today's episode alone that we could go down.
All right, I'm game.
All right. Well, Joseph Young, thank you, and find his stuff on Bandcamp, streaming services, YouTube. We'll leave some links down in the show notes as well. But
great,
Joe, my friend, thank you for coming on today. Really,
thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And check out the sci-fi reference on Beyond the Horizon.
Oh, I'm gonna look for that now. Thanks. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. The fact that you listened to this entire episode means you got value, and others will too. Do me a favor and leave a 5-star review with comments, and then share with others. You can also check out all of my videos on my YouTube channel and my website, jasonmefford.com. This podcast is primarily for education and commentary and does not represent professional advice. Views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.